Hi, welcome to episode 2 of Zig Zag. It is a look at the book of Revelation and maybe in a way that you never have seen it before, and we're looking for that pattern. Now, I want to show it to you in abbreviated fashion over these next few days, and in each installment you're going to see a couple of things, but I want to give you some bullet points, if you will. You can mark these in your own Bible, your own apps, if you will. If you make notes on personal studies, this will be helpful for you. But as I mentioned to you before, the Bible is amazing in the book of Revelation because it tells us some things that are happening on earth, and then it immediately gives us a zag and sends us back toward heaven. So, for example, in Revelation chapter 1, verses 1 through 11, we find the opening of the story. In the opening of the story, the action begins on earth as it describes John's exile on the Isle of Patmos. As John was the last surviving member of the original 12 apostles, his presence in the city of Ephesus was a problem to the Roman officials who banished him to this small island in the Aegean Sea. And so for John on earth, it wasn't going well. It's kind of sad. He's the last one left, last man standing, if you will. He has been isolated, he is alone, and he has been sent to Patmos to keep him out of the way and to die. This is where John's life will come to an end. And so when we pick up the first part of the book of Revelation, it is setting up what's going to happen next. And while we see this happening in John's life, then the Bible does something else. The Bible takes what is the first zag, if you will, in the book of Revelation, and it lets us see what's happening on or in heaven. So hence the zig and the zag. And what's happening in heaven is simply this. In Revelation 1, beginning in verse 12 and going through approximately verse 20, we find out that the scene takes a quick shift and puts us into heaven, where John now sees the glorified Christ. In Revelation 1, 12 through 13, it says, I turned around to see the voice that was speaking to me. And when I turned, someone like a son of man. Suddenly, what was happening on Patmos, isolation and death, wasn't so bad, because John now is looking into the presence of a glorified Jesus. The zig and the zag. On earth, things aren't going very well. It's a bit overwhelming. What did God do? He peeled back the layer and lets John take a look into heaven. And what he sees in heaven is amazing and will change him forever. God does the same for you. Sometimes, if you could see what's going on in heaven, if you could see what God is doing in those heavenly places, it would change your perspective of the here and now. We don't know this for a fact, and God can do anything He wants to do in any way He wants to do it. He's God. But here's what I do know. It took John being on the island of Patmos, facing death, loaded with all the emotion of being the last one, being the last man standing, being that one who had seen all these things, who had now been a young man and now grown old, and here he is on this island. And that set the stage for him to see what is perhaps some of the most powerful imagery and truth in all of God's story as it unfolds before men. I contend that in your islands, in those places where you're isolated, in those places where sometimes you feel trapped, if you could see what's going on in heaven, you would have a bit of perspective that you never had before. Does God give you that? Sometimes no. But to know that it's happening and to know that God is at work, that can be enough. And for John, what he was going to see was going to change him forever. For us, it helps us understand the book of Revelation. What starts in a very bleak moment becomes a very powerful moment. And so that's the first zigzag in the book of Revelation. There's more. They're quick. And we'll pick up another one in episode 3.